We've been gone a long time. We back now. Listen here, this ain't no house party. Y'all ready to sweat till y'all stank? What the hell going on?
Oh, we heard tale of a party. Don't cry. He's all better now.
Yes, I lied to you. Somebody please take me.
We ain't gonna kill every last one of you.
Lied to you.
Every once in a while, in the never-ending sludge of reboots, sequels, and soulless corporate slop, we get an original piece of filmmaking that tells an interesting story with craftsmanship, style, and a clear artistic voice. Set over one wild day and night in October 1932, Sinners is one such film. A period thriller that follows the return of the Smokestack twins, both played by Michael B. Jordan, as they head back to their hometown in the Mississippi Delta to open a juke joint and throw an unforgettable party. The first half of Ryan Coogler's 2-hour and 17-minute film simmers with slow-burning anticipation as the twins hustle to get everything in place. With the venue locked in, they start pulling together a team to bring their vision to life. According to the director, the film draws heavy inspiration from his late Uncle James's deep love of the blues and was directly influenced by the old blues song, Wang Dang Doodle.
We're gonna get your wang dang doodle all night long.
The lyrics tell the story of a rowdy party full of shady, nickname-wielding characters. That idea stuck with Coogler, who wanted to craft a one-day story about a group of flawed individuals who find themselves up against a threat that none of them could have predicted. And that threat arrives in the form of Remick, a vampire drawn to their music. As the night progresses, things spiral out of control. One by one, partygoers fall under Remick's spell, and the survivors are left to face the horrors alone. With wooden stakes, cloves of garlic, and whatever scraps of folklore and hoodoo magic they can muster, the group arms themselves for a last stand. What started as a celebration of freedom and music becomes a desperate, blood-soaked fight for survival, and not everyone will make it out alive. Sinners has characters with depth, loaded subtext, and a director who isn't afraid to make bold creative choices. It tells a morally complex, slow-burning tale of guilt, redemption, and the rot hiding behind piety, anchored by a brilliant script, haunting performances, and some of the most evocative direction I've seen in years.
We ain't gonna kill every last one of you.
The film opens with a foreboding narration, setting the tone with an eerie warning. Some music is said to be so powerful it can summon spirits from both the past and future, but that same power can also call forth evil. In October 1932, a battered and bloodied Sammy Moore pulls up to a church in Clarksdale, Mississippi, claw marks across his face and a broken guitar neck in his hand. Inside, his father, Pastor Jebediah, pleads with him to abandon his sinful ways and repent, but Sammy says nothing. He just grips the remains of his guitar like it's the last piece of his soul. We then have a flashback to one day earlier. Elijah and Elias Moore, better known as Smokestack, return to their hometown after years working in the underworld of Chicago. They've stolen a stash of money from gangsters, heavily implied to be Al Capone's crew, and used it to buy a rundown sawmill from Hogwood, a slippery, condescending man with ties to the KKK. The plan: turn the sawmill into a juke joint, a safe, thriving haven for the black community to drink, dance, and hear the blues. Now, the names Elijah and Elias aren't just a coincidence, they're a significant biblical reference. Elijah was a Hebrew prophet from the 9th century BC, a spiritual warrior who stood against evil. And here we have Smoke, carrying that name. His twin brother's name, Elias, is the Greek form of Elijah, so essentially we have two men who are, symbolically and spiritually, the same person, two halves of a whole. Fittingly, they're nicknamed the Smokestack Twins, a playful reference to their unity, their past as World War I veterans, and their time working for Al Capone in Chicago. The pair then track down their cousin Sammy, a young, gifted blues guitarist with big dreams to perform that evening against his father's wishes. It's important to note that at the heart of Sinners lies the spiritual journey of Sammy, who's caught between two worlds. The film first introduces him at his father's church, deep in conversation over the Bible verse to be preached the following day, Corinthians 10:13. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind, and God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear, But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. It's a powerful verse to frame a story titled Sinners. In this passage, Paul insists that temptation is never without an escape route, that sin is a choice, not a trap. And yet, as the film explores, human nature often chooses to fall anyway. We fail, that's the essence of our condition. Sammy's father warned him not to play at the club his cousins are opening. He knows the power of music, particularly the blues, noted by the very fact that the guitar he wields belonged to Sammy's uncle, the pastor's brother, and the father of the Smokestack twins, who was sinful and even hinted at being evil, so much so that Smoke literally had to kill his father to protect Stack. As a result of all this, the pastor no doubt sees the danger as Sammy is heading towards.
You keep dancing with the devil. One day he's gonna follow you home.
But like the prodigal son, Sammy leaves anyway, chasing his dreams and giving in to temptation. The twins then split up to get supplies and hire old friends they will need to run the event. Smoke heads into town and starts recruiting. First, he visits old friends Grace and Bo Cho, asking them to help with signage and supplies for the grand opening. He also catches two punks trying to rob his truck full of liquor, so he shoots one in the ass and the other in the leg, making it crystal clear that he's not a man to be messed with. His reputation precedes him, but he also has a soft side, paying Grace and Bo to patch the men up and even giving a local girl a lesson on negotiation. Meanwhile, Stack and Sammy find Cornbread, a towering old friend now stuck working a cotton field, and hire him on the spot for security. At the train station, Stack then manages to rope in a faded blues legend, Delta Slim, by letting him perform for the crowd and offering him Irish beer, one of the house specials at the juke joint. The performance draws attention, but it also brings an old ghost, Mary, a childhood friend of the twins and Stack's ex. She's effectively bitter. Her mother, who practically raised the boys, just passed away, and neither of them sent flowers or even showed up to the funeral. The tension is clear, the wounds still raw. It's also here that Sammy meets Pearline, a married woman with a spark in her eye and a voice to match. Flirting comes easy, and he invites her to the opening night, unaware that his life and everyone else's is about to be changed forever. Meanwhile, Smoke pays a visit to his estranged wife Annie, a hoodoo practitioner who lives on the outskirts of town. The two have a painful history. They lost a child years ago, and that tragedy drove them apart. Despite their distance, Annie tells Smoke that her spiritual practices have kept both him and his brother safe all these years. The emotional tension between them still lingers, but so does the spark, and their reunion leads to an intimate, passionate moment as they fall back into old rhythms. As the sun begins to set on the other side of town, an Irishman named Remick stumbles up to the home of a racist, isolated couple, Bert and Joan. Looking desperate and covered in burns, he wins them over by offering gold in exchange for shelter from Indians. Before long, a group of Choctaw Indians appear at their doorstep, warning Joan that Remick is dangerous and not what he seems. But Joan ignores the warning and sends him away. When she returns inside, the truth reveals itself. Remick is a vampire, and he's already turned Bert. Seconds later, he turns her too. The quiet countryside now has 3 bloodthirsty monsters loose and ready to hunt. That evening, the juke joint officially opens, drawing a large crowd from the surrounding community. The atmosphere is electric, but the opening hasn't come cheap, and the twins have essentially sunk most of their money into the place. To keep the party going, Stack and Annie convince Smoke to let some of the guests pay with scripts, a kind of makeshift currency used during the Depression. Mary is also allowed inside, both because of her deep ties to the twins and her mixed heritage. At first, the night is euphoric. The club becomes a sanctuary. The music unites everyone. One breathtaking sequence, a long dreamlike tracking shot, follows Sammy as he plays guitar and sings. The music transcends time. Spirits begin to appear, blending past and future. At one point, a man with an electric guitar, a technology not yet invented in 1932, joins the jam session, emphasizing how the blues pierces the veil between time and worlds. The building itself appears to catch fire in this vision as a symbol of liberation. It's a metaphysical blaze, a moment of pure freedom forged through sound. Sammy dedicates the song to his father, confessing that though he was raised in the church, he's always harbored a hidden love for the blues. As the night goes on, Sammy falls deeper into temptation. He sleeps with a married woman. Stack does the same with Mary. The club, once a haven, begins to unravel into an alcohol-soaked, lust-driven chaos. And just as it seems that things couldn't spiral further, a new force enters the mix: vampires. It's important to note that the film is filled with a unique spiritual texture. In fact, Sinners weaves together no less than 6 belief systems, each representing different philosophies, traditions, and interpretations of the supernatural. Hoodoo, as practiced by Annie, brings African American spirituality into the story, rooted in protection, ancestral power, and ritual. Choctaw religion, representing Native American spirituality, introduces vampire hunters with their own sacred knowledge and traditions. Christianity is woven through the Delta community. Churches, pastors, crosses, and prayer shape the lives of many of the characters, including Grace, who wears a cross around her neck. Vampirism is its own metaphysical system, complete with a dark philosophy and an alternate reality, as embodied by Remick and his offer of eternal life through damnation. The KKK functions as a twisted, theologically driven cult, an extremist religion of hate, complete with its own rituals, doctrines, and hierarchy. And finally, there's the blues. From the opening narration, we're told that music, especially blues, can pierce a thin place between this world and the next. Across cultures, from Ireland to West Africa to Native America, music is seen as a spiritual bridge, capable of calling forth ancestors, summoning memories, and opening portals between past and future. But there's a catch. That kind of power cuts both ways. Music in Sinners is sacred, but it's also dangerous and can summon monsters. So when Sammy plays, when he truly plays, he's not just entertaining a crowd, he's channeling something cosmic, something eternal, and in doing so, he invites both salvation and destruction. I'm also reminded of Romans 7:19, for I do not do the good I want to, but the evil I do not want to. This I keep on doing. This passage captures the internal war raging inside Smoke, Stack, and Sammy, and indeed most of the other sinners in this movie. Smoke in particular sees himself as irredeemable. He's a killer, a thief, a man burdened by guilt over lost family and wartime violence. Stack is charming and manipulative, using people to achieve his ends, and yet still deeply loves his brother. Sammy, the most spiritually conflicted, struggles with temptation, guilt, and purpose.
Careful, boy. You gonna bite off more than you can chew.
Well, somebody take me in your eyes.
So it's here that the 3 vampires, Remick, Bert, and Joan, approach the juke joint disguised as traveling musicians, claiming they were drawn in by the sound of music and asking to join the celebration. They play a short set to prove their skills and even offer to pay, but the twins remain wary. Something about these 3 feels off, and despite the money on the table, they refuse them entry. Mary, seeing the opportunity and knowing how strapped the twins are financially, decides to speak to them herself. She listens to their music and is impressed at first, until she notices Remick's eyes glowing and saliva dripping from his mouth. Sensing danger, she starts backing away, but before she can get far, Remick lunges at her like a predator. At the same time, Cornbread steps outside for a bathroom break, leaving Slim to cover the door, and is attacked by Bert and Joan. Meanwhile, inside the joint, Sammy slips away with Pearline and takes her into a back room where they become intimate. Mary, now infected, then makes it back inside and seduces her old flame, Stack. At the same time, a fight breaks out when one of the patrons is caught using loaded dice and slashes another man across the face with a razor. Smoke handles the situation just fine and orders Sammy to go get Stack, but Sammy's too embarrassed to interrupt him. Unfortunately, when Smoke checks on his brother himself, he walks in on a nightmare. Mary, now fully turned, is feeding on Stack's neck, and so Smoke unloads his gun into her, but she walks it off, vowing to kill everyone inside before fleeing into the night. Smoke and Slim quickly clear the joint, ordering all patrons to leave. Only a few remain: Smoke, Sammy, Annie, Slim, Pearline, and Grace, with Bo having also left to get the car. Cornbread returns and demands to be let back inside, or at the very least be paid for his work. But something's off. Annie senses it when he requests to be let back inside, rather than simply walking back in, as he had done throughout the night. When Smoke reaches out to pay him, Cornbread attacks, but is shot in the face before he could bite his arm. It's here that Annie fully realizes the truth. They're dealing with vampires. Suddenly, Stack, dead just moments before, rises again, now turned. He bursts out of the room and tries to attack them, but Annie douses him with a jar of pickled garlic juice, forcing him to flee into the night. But the damage is done. While the group was distracted, the vampires outside had begun turning the rest of the fleeing patrons, including Bo, into members of their growing horde. At the head of the group is Remick, flanked by Mary, Stack, Bert, and Joan. It's here that Remick reveals that Hogwood isn't just a local landowner, but the Grand Dragon of the KKK. Hogwood had planned to use Bert, his nephew, to lead a clansman raid and massacre the partygoers, and Stack confirms the story, now able to see Remick and Bert's memories through the psychic bond. But Remick, despite his monstrous nature, claims that he doesn't share the clan's views. What he wants is Sammy. He believes his music has the power to summon the spirits of his ancestors, souls Remick says were lost to time and bloodshed. Remick offers the group a twisted kind of salvation: become vampires, live forever and escape the cycle of persecution. Remick and his followers are classic Stoker-era monsters. They don't age, they drink blood, they need to be invited in, they burn in sunlight, fear garlic and silver, and die with a stake through the heart. But what makes them so dangerous isn't just their fangs, it's their offer. They promise eternal life, freedom from pain and fear in their community of music, love, and immortality. It sounds like heaven, but it's a lie. The vampire family strips its members of their identities, turning them into hollow versions of themselves. While Remick claims to be offering freedom, is really offering spiritual death. It's not a resurrection, it's not rebirth, it's undeath. And Sammy begins to understand that. This closely mirrors Genesis 4:7, when God warns Cain, "Sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." In Sinners, that's literal. The vampires are quite literally waiting at the club's door, and the one they're really after is Sammy. Which brings us to another verse, Matthew 16:26. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Sammy reaches a moment of clarity. All his life he's pursued music. It's his passion, his calling. But now he realizes that if he gives in, if he accepts the vampire's offer, he'll be trading his soul for a lie. And for a fleeting moment, he regrets not listening to his father. He sees the devil clearly now, and it isn't just metaphorical. In that choice, rejecting full salvation, choosing to face death instead of surrendering his soul, Sammy becomes more than a musician. He becomes a man who understands the cost of compromise. Sinners isn't just about monsters and music, it's about the cost of temptation, the weight of heritage, and the fragile line between spiritual freedom and eternal damnation. With no choice left, the survivors arm themselves for war. Stakes, guns, garlic, anything they can find, and the fight is brutal. Grace rushes at her turned husband Beau and drives a stake through him, lighting them both on fire. Slim slashes his own arm to draw a crowd of vampires away from the others, sacrificing himself in the process. At the same time, Perline is gravely wounded right in front of Sammy, her death shaking him to his core. The team manages to kill many of the vampires, but the toll is heavy. Annie is then bitten during the battle and begs Smoke to stake her before she turns. With a heavy heart, he does. Interestingly, Mary and Stack momentarily regain their humanity at the sight of her death, overcome with grief and horror. Then the brothers clash in a violent, tragic fight, while Sammy tries to escape Remick in the waters outside near the club. It's a twisted, symbolic baptism. Remick repeatedly dunks Sammy beneath the surface, trying to force a transformation, but Sammy resists. In his moment of greatest vulnerability, he turns back to the faith of his childhood and begins to recite the Lord's Prayer. It's a powerful moment. Despite everything, Sammy cries out to the God he was raised to believe in. The vampire claws at his face, explaining the wounds we saw at the film's opening, but Sammy fights back, driving the silver-plated headstock of his uncle's guitar straight into Remick's skull. Then Smoke arrives just in time to finish the job, plunging a stake into Remick's chest as the first rays of sunlight break the horizon. As a result, Remick bursts into flames, and one by one, the rest of the vampires follow. But there's no time to rest. The clan is on its way and Smoke tells Sammy to run. It's here we get a powerful moment, a shot loaded with symbolism and emotional weight. Despite his fondness for smoking, we realize that his brother would always roll a cigarette, so Smoke was so rattled by his experiences in war that his hands would often tremble. With him failing to roll a cigarette, in this solitude, we notice two necklaces around his neck. Items he's worn for most of the film. One is a pair of World War I dog tags. The second set belonged to Stack, which Smoke took from his brother's body. The dog tags represent more than military service. They're tokens of identity and brotherhood. Worn together, they symbolize their unbreakable bond. But there's also a third item, another necklace, one that carries deeper spiritual weight. It's a small mojo bag given to him by Annie. Throughout the film, it's hinted that Annie's magic kept Smoke safe for years. By the time we reach this moment, however, Smoke has lost everything. His brother and friends to vampirism, his wife to death, and the hope of a peaceful future. Standing on the edge of a blood-soaked reckoning with the KKK, Smoke takes off the mojo bag. It's his way of letting go and making his way back to Annie. But what's especially telling is what he does next. He doesn't put Stack's necklace around his neck. Instead, he hangs it beneath his gun. It's a quiet, haunting visual choice. He's not just carrying a memory, he's bringing Stack into battle with him, one last time. Hogwood and his lynch mob roll up to the sawmill at dawn expecting easy prey, but what they get instead is a one-man Punisher-like war. Smoke is ready with a small arsenal and uses it with brutal precision. One by one, he cuts them down, fighting like a man with nothing left to lose. He wins, but he's also hit pretty badly. Still, it's not the end. His story closes on a bittersweet note. In his final moments, he sees a vision, Annie waiting for him in the afterlife, holding the child they lost. In death, he finally finds the peace he was denied in life. Importantly, Sammy meanwhile returns to his father's church, much like the prodigal son in Luke 15:20. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him and kissed him. This is the most overt biblical parallel in Sinners, especially in Sammy's arc. He leaves the protection of his father, a preacher who warns him not to play blues, and ventures into a world of temptation, indulgence and danger. He indulges in sensual pleasures, commits adultery, and unleashes literal demons. Yet in the end, he returns to his father's church, bruised and broken. Like the prodigal son, Sammy is met not with condemnation, but with open arms and love. I think this underscores the film's message of grace, that no matter how far one strays, the door to redemption is always open. Yet, unlike the parable, Sammy chooses to walk away again, not into sin necessarily, but into a self-defined path. The film echoes the parable, but adds ambiguity. Does returning to the father require full surrender, or is there redemption in simply acknowledging the return? We then jump forward to 1992. Sammy, now an elderly blues musician played by the legendary Buddy Guy, is seen finishing a performance at his own blues club named Perline's in memory of his first love. He's clearly lived a full life, his passion for music undiminished. As the crowd disperses, he's approached by Stack and Mary, ageless and sharp in their 90s finest, having survived that night in 1932. It's revealed that during that battle, Smoke chose to spare his brother's life, but there was a condition. Stack had to promise to let Sammy live a full life. Honoring that promise, Stack and Mary fled before everyone burned at sunrise. Now they've returned, and Stack can sense that Sammy's time is nearly up. He gently offers to turn him and grant Sammy immortality, but Sammy declines. He's lived long enough and has no regrets. Sammy admits that he still has nightmares about that night in 1932, but he also confesses something deeper. Before the sun went down, it was the best day of his life. Stack agrees. It was the last time he saw his brother, and for a few fleeting hours, they were all truly free. And so, by the film's end, Sammy has rejected both the Christianity of his youth and the full salvation of the vampires. He's chosen the blues. The film doesn't make Sammy's decision feel triumphant or tragic, it leans into ambiguity. There's a lingering sense of wistfulness. While blues music is clearly linked to freedom, it's also tied to Sammy's departure from his family, his church, the grounding principles he was raised with. It's the film's dominant spiritual force, but you're left wondering whether Sammy's father, for all his rigidity, deserved to be heard more. Maybe he saw things clearly, even if he couldn't articulate them in a way that Sammy could accept. The film ends with a quiet, sentimental post-credit scene. A young Sammy, innocent and full of dreams, is shown strumming his guitar and singing This Little Light of Mine, which is a song that was being sung by the choir at his father's church. It's a haunting reminder of everything that was lost and everything that was gained on that one unforgettable night. Ryan Coogler has taken a Southern Gothic vampire horror flick, loaded it with history, music, soul, and emotional devastation, and somehow made it all work. He directs Sinners with a sense of purpose, rhythm, and control. He understands tone. He knows when to let a scene breathe, when to crank up the tension, and when to let the music speak for itself. There's restraint here. Coogler isn't interested in jump scares or excessive gore. The horror comes from mood, from implication, from the creeping dread that you're watching something spiritual unravel. Sinners also looks gorgeous. The film oozes southern heat, sweat, and spirit. Cinematographer Autumn Durald Arakapow frames every shot with painterly precision. Dusty cotton fields lit in amber twilight, candle-lit interiors filled with shadowy tension, and the juke joint itself, a sweaty, living organism where spirit and sinners alike come to dance. If the heart of Sinners is its characters, then its soul is the music. The soundtrack is a love letter to the blues, not just as a genre, but as a spiritual force. The songs don't just entertain, they summon. They act as incantations, pulling spirits into the present, ripping open the veil between the living and the dead. Coogler treats music like a cosmic language that shapes scenes and drives a story. Composer Ludwig Göransson blends traditional blues with eerie, almost mythic undertones, creating a score that's both grounded and transcendent. And when Sammy plays, you feel it in your bones. There's a lot of praise to be given to the costuming, set design, lighting, and the film's use of sound as well. The ambience in the juke joint feels alive. You hear clinking glasses, creaking floorboards, distant footsteps, and whispers. The sound design heightens tension without resorting to cheap stingers or deafening blasts. Even the supernatural elements are handled with a bit of restraint. When the vampires show up, it's not shrieking violins, it's a low hum. A heartbeat slowing down, the music distorting ever so slightly. Because of this, it gets under your skin. The only complaint I would have here is that the mixing can make it difficult to hear some of the dialogue from time to time. The screenplay is where Sinners really shines. It's not afraid of ambiguity. It doesn't spoon-feed you morals. It gives you characters with flaws, desires, regrets, and contradictions, and then lets you wrestle with their choices. The dialogue is sharp, natural, and often laced with poetic irony. There's no lazy exposition, no forced diversity pandering, no pop culture snark. Just people, history, culture, and sin laid bare and bleeding. I also appreciated how every character in Sinners feels lived in. Sammy, played by Miles Caton, is the emotional core of the film. He's young, talented, and torn between sacred duty and profound calling. He loves the blues, but he fears what it might awaken. His journey is spiritual, musical, and painfully human. We then have Smokestack. Michael B. Jordan is at his best here, delivering two distinct performances with a lot of depth and range. Smoke is haunted and stoic, a man crushed under the weight of his sins. Stack is the charming schemer, a fast talker with a slow-burning conscience. Together, they're electric. Wunmi Masako's Annie is the heart of the supernatural side of the film. As Smoke's estranged wife and a hoodoo priestess, she's grounded, mystical, and tragic. Her final moments are some of the most emotionally wrenching in the film. Mary, played by Haley Steinfeld, is a mixed-race woman caught between identities, between past love and present survival. Her transformation into a vampire while attempting to help the brothers is a tragic loss that marks the beginning of the community's undoing. Finally, we have Jack O'Connell's Remick, who's one of the most interesting villains in recent memory. He's seductive, philosophical, and deeply sad. He doesn't really want to destroy Sammy, he wants to possess what Sammy has. His offer of full salvation is what makes him so dangerous. Even the side characters, Grace, Bo, Cornbread, and Delta Slim, are memorable, charismatic, and distinct. They all feel like people with stories of their own, not just body count padding. Sinners is what happens when a filmmaker actually gives a damn about their craft. It's smart without being smug, stylish without being hollow, and emotional without being manipulative. It's a religious vampire film that uses bloodsuckers not as cheap monsters, but as spiritual metaphors. It's bold, brutal, and does a great job of transporting you back in time.
Stay. It's you?
Of course it's me. Open the door.
That ain't your brother.
Yo, Smelling Tank. I think I shot myself.